Hierakonpolis 1898. Two British Egyptologists, James Quibble and Frederick Green, were excavating a temple when they made one of the greatest finds in all of archaeology. The artifact they unearthed was Narmer's pallet, 5,000 years old yet in pristine condition. It documented part of the reign of the very first figure in recorded history, the Pharaoh Narmer. The events surrounding Egyptian unification are shrouded in mystery, but we can piece together a sequence of events from the available evidence. This sequence starts around the year 3200 BC, with the end of the Middle Naqada Period. The last 800 years had seen immense developments taking place, and the seeds of unification had been planted. The late Naqada period lacks the cultural and technological developments of the earlier periods, yet it is just as significant. By 3200 BC, three regional kingdoms had been firmly established in Upper Egypt, where most of the power in the country was concentrated. The southernmost of these was the kingdom of Nekhen, centered at Hierakonpolis. The kingdom had access to trade with Nubia to the south and to the gold and copper mines in the eastern hills. The smallest of the three was the kingdom of Nubt, centered at Naqada. Despite their access to the resources of the eastern hills, they were the least powerful of the three states. The most powerful state in Upper Egypt was the kingdom of Tjeni, centered at Abydos. The kingdom controlled river traffic along the Nile and had the easiest access to trade in the Middle East. Ironically, they also had strong trading links with Nubia, as they simply traded overland, avoiding the other two kingdoms. This suggests that they possessed the most powerful army of the three, as maintaining and guarding these routes would have been difficult otherwise. Much less is known about the state of Lower Egypt during the time, but evidence suggests that another regional kingdom controlled it. As the late period progressed, the kingdom of Tjeni began expanding northwards, bringing villages under their control and establishing new settlements along the Nile. This northward expansion brought Naqadan culture with it. Up until now, Lower Egypt had adopted aspects of the southern culture, but their culture was still somewhat distinct. This changed sometime in the late period as Lower Egyptians fully adopted the Upper Egyptian way of doing things. Egypt became culturally unified. The northward expansion of Tjeni brought new wealth to the kingdom, and soon one of its leaders, known simply as the Scorpion King, built an extravagant tomb for himself. The tomb was by far the richest in Egypt up until that point. It contained large quantities of goods imported from far and wide, such as lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and ivory from Nubia, with the usual complement of gold and silver. Excavated in 1989, this tomb is the oldest one to be found that matches the burials of later pharaohs. Labels of goods in the tomb are also the oldest hieroglyphs found in Egypt, although the writing system had not been fully developed. The burials of leaders at the time tells us a lot about the fates of their respective kingdoms. Over time, the burials at Abydos and Hierakonpolis grew more elaborate, while the ones at Naqada became more modest, suggesting that Nubt had stagnated economically. The kingdom's misfortune did not end there. The late period became more militaristic, as indicated by the appearance of walls around many settlements in Upper Egypt. At some stage, Tjeni won a military victory against Nubt, cutting it off from trade and mining, thus weakening it even further. Over time, Nubt was completely defeated by the other two kingdoms and their territory was annexed. The town of Naqada became insignificant. These events would have taken place in the early 31st century BC. At this point, the kingdom of Tjeni controlled about 2/3 of the entire country, and it seems that its leaders set their sights on the kingdom of Nekhen to the south. It is not known how, but Tjeni incorporated Nekhen and united Upper Egypt. One theory is that this was accomplished through military conquest, as many skull injuries were found in the graves around Hierakonpolis that date to the time period. This need not have been the case though, as Hierakonpolis avoided the fate of Naqada and remained an important center in Egypt. It is possible that the two kingdoms entered an alliance or union, where Tjeni was the senior partner. This would explain why the early pharaohs revered both Abydos and Hierakonpolis, as they would be descendants of both royal houses. Regardless of how it happened, the fact remains clear that Tjeni brought all of Upper Egypt under its control, and was now by far the most powerful state in Egypt. This is the part of the story where King Narmer makes his appearance. At some point in the late 31st century BC, Narmer became king of Tjeni and donned the white crown of Upper Egypt. He set out to unify the entire country. The last state he had to conquer was that of Lower Egypt, whose ruler supposedly wore a red crown, the crown of Lower Egypt. The best source for the events that followed is certainly Narmer's palette. Discovered in 1898, the palette gives clues as to how Egypt was unified. We know that the palette refers to King Narmer as it has his name written front and center, being spelt with a catfish, pronounced Nar, and a copper chisel, pronounced Mer. We also know that Narmer was a pharaoh, as his name is contained inside a box called a serek, which was reserved for the use of a pharaoh's name. With Narmer introduced, we can turn our attention to his achievements, which were somewhat exaggerated on the palette. He is shown as a strong bull, tearing down city walls and trampling his enemies, possibly somewhere in Lower Egypt. He is also shown as a man twice the normal size, leading his army against defeated foes. On the other side of the palette, he is seen smiting an enemy with a mace, while others flee beneath him. There is also a piece that refers to 6,000 captives being taken in a battle somewhere in the Nile Delta, possibly the last battle of Unification. One of the reasons why the palette is assumed to be referring to Unification is that it is the first instance where the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt appear together. The combination of these two would later be used as the crown of a unified Egypt. Although the meaning of the palette is debated, it would seem to suggest that Narmer conquered Lower Egypt and became the very first pharaoh. For over 2,000 years, the first pharaoh was believed to be a king called Menes or Meni, as he was the first to appear on Manetho's list of kings, as well as being the first on the Palermo stone, a list of pharaohs in the first 5 dynasties. Narmer was first mentioned in his palette, and it seems very likely that Narmer and Menes are the same person. With the country subdued under his rule, Narmer set about tightening his grip. One critical choice he had to make was the location of the country's new capital. Some historians, particularly early ones such as Manetho, believe the first capital of a unified Egypt was the city of Tjeni, near Abydos in Upper Egypt. This seems unlikely though, as not only has no trace of the city ever been found, but contemporary evidence also strongly suggests another candidate. The city of Memphis, near modern-day Cairo, is believed to have been founded by Narmer himself to be used as a brand new capital city. Memphis is far from Upper Egypt, so it is likely that the new capital was chosen to keep a watchful eye on recently conquered Lower Egypt. Narmer's Egypt stretched from the delta in the north through Memphis, which was the meeting point of Upper and Lower Egypt. It continued along the Nile, through the centers of Upper Egypt, and finally to the southernmost point of the kingdom, the city of Elephantine. Through his actions, Narmer had created the first nation-state in history. That concludes the video. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we will be exploring the mythology of ancient Egypt, its gods and origin story.